I went from being broke in the East Village that a year later I had like $10 million in contracts. Keep going, get back on the horse, even if you fall, and keep going because you are going to get there in the way you least expect.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of FYI, Finding Your Inspiration. Today we are in Miami and we're with an incredibly talented, intelligent guest. We got Nely Galán. Nely is the first Latina president of a network. She is also a New York Times best-selling author of a book called Self-Made. So,
yes, I'm so happy to be here.
We're super excited to have you here.
What could be more important than finding your inspiration?
Nothing.
Right?
Nothing. God.
My inspiration in life is being an immigrant and coming to this country and having my parents lose everything and having to start all over and seeing two people that had already become self-made lose everything and start all over again and have to find the inspiration to help their children. And I thought to myself, if my parents did all that and brought me to this country from Cuba, how could I not do something big with my life? How could I not take every moment and really do something great and really find that flame in my life? And so to me, it's very important. And I do think the reason you say about financial literacy is because I feel like what's important in life is mission and money. And money has to come first.
Money's so important, right? Money is something that needs to be respected that we don't realize how powerful, and I don't mean that in a greedy way or in a
no,
but how much we need to respect money and how we use it and the power that it has.
I think a lot of young people feel like, finding your inspiration, which is very, very important, but you also have to just make a buck. Because if you don't have that, it's not even like, as you said, not grandiose. It's not like we want Porsches and this and that. Right. I mean, that's kind of the wrong reason to want money. The reason to want money is that as you get older, you have the freedom to do anything you want and really follow your bliss. And you have to have money to do that. So I love thinking about creativity and doing expansive, beautiful things with your life in a parallel track with making money. And sometimes making money is really a parallel track, and it doesn't have to be the great love of your life.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point you just made too. I feel like what is happening in the world? Like we fell into this thing, like when people talk about achieving goals, or I had to work so hard and I had to grind so hard to make my movie, it's like, no, you did that for you. That's what you have to do to achieve things.
Sacrificing is not suffering. It's sacrificing for something big. And you have to have that big idea to so that you can really finish your goals.
Yeah.
But it's not suffering.
Right.
Suffering is what people do around the world.
Right.
Sacrificing and like not having everything be short-term gratification is what you have to do to get to where you're going. So as I said, my parents had no money, nothing. We came here. And, I started selling Avon in the 7th grade to help my parents because immigrants are in a team.
Avon's calling.
Avon's calling. And, so I just started making money since I was very young because I had to. And I got into TV very young because I was at an all-girl Catholic school, and I got accused of plagiarism. They thought I had written a story that they thought was Ernest Hemingway. I got it, not expelled, but like I was told I couldn't go back to school for 3 days, suspended. And I wrote an article to 17 magazine about why you should never send your kids to all-girl Catholic school. And they took me back into the school and they go, no, we realized you didn't plagiarize. And then the article came out and I got expelled.
Wow.
And when I got expelled, 17 magazine was so proud of me that, I had written this article and that these nuns expelled me, that they offered me the youngest guest editorship in the history of 17 magazine when I was 15.
Wow.
And at 17, I started writing stories about young women and this and that. And at the same time, CBS was launching the teenage version of 60 Minutes, the TV show.
Yeah.
And they were going to produce it in Austin, Texas. And I got called to audition to be one of the reporters, and I got it. And they thought I was like 20 and looked young. because they thought,
You were 15?
By that point I was like 16 and a half.
Okay, wow.
So I moved to Texas. I got on this TV show. From there I was recruited to CBS Network to be in the correspondent training program, to be a news producer and correspondent. And then I had the most beautiful thing happen to me. I went to work at CBS. They sent me around the country to work on a John F. Kennedy special. And I had to interview everyone that had ever known John F. Kennedy. And one of those people was Norman Lear, the producer. And he's like, young lady, are you Jewish? What are you? Because I sounded a little like Joan Rivers in New Jersey. And I said, I'm Latina. And he goes, oh my God, my partner and I just bought the first Spanish TV station in New York, Channel 47.
No way.
Yeah. And they go, come and work for us. And I went to work for that. I quit my job, even though that was like the ego job, which was to be a reporter.
Yeah. Because
when you're an immigrant, you realize like the decisions you make are very important. And I thought, he and his partner are both like multi-millionaires. They're in the entertainment business. I can't follow a job. I have to follow people.
Smart.
And I quit being a reporter, and I went to this little rinky-dinky Latino station in Newark, and they said to me, "You're so good. You run the station." It's like running a crappy little station.
Yeah.
And it was Latino, and it changed my entire life. Menudo was in New York. They would come to me, the manager for Menudo, and he goes, "We're going to go." For those of you that don't know, it was like the first Latino boy band.
Yeah.
And they were like playing in Radio City Music Hall, and they came to me and they go, what are we going to do? We need publicity. Nobody knows who we are. I'm like, I'll give you a zillion advertising, but we split the box office. I'd pull things out of my butt.
Yeah.
And we'd make a lot of money.
Make it work.
So it was like learning business, like getting an MBA on the job, running this rinky-dinky little station. And I ran it for 3 years. And they sold it for a fortune.
Wow.
And at that point, I was 25 years old.
You're like, this ain't bad.
Yeah, it should have been more, but whatever. And I decided to start my own business. And I thought to myself, I'm going to start another channel. And nothing happened. Crickets for 4 years, nothing. I had to take jobs being a reporter for CBS on the side.
Yeah.
Crickets, and I'm living in the East Village.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, dear God, like, what am I going to do? Like, my parents are like, you're going to lose your looks. Find a guy. Stop trying to be an entrepreneur. Get a job.
Settle down.
Like, whatever. And I just was like, I'm going to have my own business. And in the 4th year, I was like, dear God, please throw me a bone. This can't, like, how could I have nothing? Everything I'm trying doesn't work. And in the 4th year, I got a call from HBO. And HBO said, Nely, we hear you're like an expert in the Latino market and that you're trying to do a channel. Well, we want to launch HBO in Latin America. Do you want to come and help us? And it was like my first break. And it was like, it was kind of like a consulting thing. I went and did it. I had it up and running in Latin America in 3 months. Like, wow. I really knew how to run a TV station.
Wow.
And I get a call from ESPN. And they go, we heard you launched HBO. We want to outsource ESPN to somebody who's Latino, and we want to launch it all over Latin America. And I go, I don't know anything about sports. And they go, don't worry, we're hiring you a tutor. You're going to do it. Because there was nobody else who knew how to do it.
Wow.
And the third call I got was from Rupert Murdoch, who nobody knew who he was. He was coming from Australia to the United States. He was buying Fox. And he's like, I heard you launch channels. Right place, right time.
Wow.
And he's like, I said, but I want to make shows. Because by then I was like, this is too hard. I want to make shows. And he goes, young lady, if you want to be the queen of programming, first be the queen of channels. I'm going to give you 7 channels to launch. And my business took off. I went from being broke in the East Village that a year later I had like $10 million in contracts.
Wow.
And I launched over the next 4 or 5 years 10 channels around the world. I did them in Latin America, I did them in Asia, I did them in Israel, and I launched HBO, ESPN, Fox, MGM, and Sony all over the world.
Wow.
And then the company that had bought Channel 47, which was an insurance company, had bought 15 stations around the country. They bought the station, they bought the thing, they turned it into Telemundo, and he died of a brain aneurysm, and it went into bankruptcy court. And then Rupert Murdoch and Sony both had been my clients. And they're like, it's a blind auction in bankruptcy court, and we're both going for it. And I knew them both, and I was the only Latina that had experience running a channel. Not in the United States, but abroad.
Whoa.
And when they did a bit, they went after it, the two of them. Sony won, and when Sony won, they bought my business, and they offered me to be the first Latina president of a network in the U.S.
Of Telemundo.
Of Telemundo.
Wow.
And then I ran Telemundo for a number of years, and we sold it to NBC, which will later take us to other parts of the story.
That's all. Okay, I have some. Well, let me just start.
But there's a lot of lessons here for people.
No, yeah, let's jump into a couple of. Okay, so first of all, that's an incredible journey.
It tells you, like in today's world, like what's the emerging business? What's the emerging market? Like back then, the Latino market was nothing.
Yeah, right.
So think about it. I was employee 1 of Channel 47.
Wow, right.
And I became the president of Telemundo, which was Channel 47 was the number 1 station for Telemundo. So, and I could have been somebody that goes, I don't want to be, and I did. I was like, I don't want to do Latino things. And in fact, I said to Norman Lear when he goes, come and work for us, I was like, Latino Spanish market? I'm at CBS. And he goes, young lady, are you stupid? You're Latina, you speak Spanish, the Latin market is going to be huge.
Yeah.
It's a multi-billion-dollar market, and you're going to be employee 1. If you're an idiot, you're going to be rich. And I'm so glad I listened to him.
Yeah.
And I quit the sexy job. I tell my son this all the time. I go, if you were me, you would have done the sexy job. But because I was an immigrant and my parents were broke, and we had really gone through a trauma of leaving our country, I took the pragmatic route. And that pragmatic route has led me to all good things.
Yeah. Wow.
And to finding my mission. Because I really feel like now you're talking about financial literacy. And yes, now, second part of my life, financial literacy is my new mission. But my initial mission was to tell the stories of Latinos in the United States.
Right.
And that mission took me very, very, very far.
Very far. Now you knew nothing about programming. You didn't go to school for this. This wasn't. So when you decided to start making the decisions of what program, what to do, what to program, where did that come from? I'm going to
tell everybody like I think something that nobody says, right? Like, school is great for a different reason, right? School, unless you're a doctor or a lawyer, unless it's something that you need to learn how to be a surgeon or whatever, it's to really grow up, and it's to be a cultured person, and it's to be someone who reads and thinks a certain way. But most jobs you have to learn on the job, right? Because they are very much something that's day to day. You have to learn it, and you have to be mentored by other people. And I think that, common sense takes you a lot of places, right?
True.
So I went to run this little TV station. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I had no programming. So the first thing I had to do was go buy programming. I wasn't going to make programming. I didn't even know how to do that.
Right.
So I went to Latin America, the networks in Mexico, and said, I want to buy shows from you. And they'd go, okay, we'll charge you back then $1,000 an episode. I go, no, it's got to be $50 an episode. We don't have any money. If we grow, I'll pay you $100. We're New Yorkers. We negotiate. I sold Avon. I made a lot of money selling Avon. Selling Avon really did.
If you could sell Avon door to door.
No, door to door, and in my school, and out of my locker, and I paid for my tuition. If I could do that, I could sell TV shows.
Yeah.
Forget about it. It was really easier to
love that.
To do the TV shows. Then, I'd go, I got to get advertisers, right? So I first would and back then we didn't have the internet where you'd have everybody's address. I would just go, let's find who are the big people, and I'd call them, I'd cold call them. Like a lot of young people go, oh, this is so hard. I'm like, when you're young, you have the most energy. Freaking do 5 jobs and put the money away. Do 5 jobs. What the hell's wrong with you?
Right. Well, especially somebody like your energy's infectious. I'm like, you're like a magnet. I'm already locked in. So that's important, though, not to overshoot that, is that you have this insane, energetic way of. That's part of the networking, and I agree with you.
I've had kids come to work for me, and they go, the day they come, I'm like building shelves in the office, and they're like, you're building shelves? Like, we have to build
Fiji
shelves?
water, not the owner of Fiji, the owner of Fiji water.
So they come and they go, you're building shelves, and I go, we clean the toilet, We build shelves, and we go to the White House.
We do the whole thing.
I mean, what do you think? Like, shit has to get done.
That's right.
So, like, there's no job too small, and there's no job too big. And again, I think that those years, I was 22 to 25, that I was taking people on the plane while I ran the thing 5 days a week.
Wow.
I think that that's how I got all of my knowledge, my contacts, my everything.
Yeah.
Because I work 7 days a week. A lot of us get caught up. You work in a place, and like they teach you one little thing, and you're not understanding why the whole thing happens.
Right.
And I think running a little business, even if it's not your business, if it's on somebody else's dime, teaches you the macro and the micro. Like, why are we doing this? And what's the big idea? And what's the purpose? And then how do we execute that?
Right.
And I think life is always to be living in the macro and the micro, the macro and the micro. What's the point of this? Let's readdress that. Are we doing this for the right reasons? Okay, now how do we do it?
Yeah, exactly. So for the person out there listening, a lot of our audience lives in affordable living, and we're trying to give them blueprints to navigate how somebody amazing like yourself that comes on. What's your opinion on a way for them to judge that macro and micro?
Well, first of all, I think if you're living we've all lived in places that we had to live in, right? Yeah. And there's no shame in that.
Right.
I mean, like, I'm I'm a very humble person, and I don't think anything is, I've had friends that go, you can't come to my house, because I go, are you crazy? Like, and I don't live grandiose, right? So I think that, number one, you have to have big dreams in life. You have to dream big.
Yes.
But dreams without action is nothing.
Right.
Right?
Very powerful. Speaking of, let's get into some personal life. You have some amazing achievements. What kind of obstacles have you come through? Any devastation?
Well, I have. Yeah, I have. I mean, I've had a beautiful, career and a beautiful life. It's very difficult for a woman like me who's done very well and has made money to have, normal relationships with guys.
Sure.
I think, I have a kid. I'm a single mom. My ex, who is a lovely person, but we had irreconcilable differences, and I've had a lot of that happen in my life, which has been difficult. But I would say, people say to me, have you had real obstacles in business? And I would say not as much, because I think what other people think of as a negative, I think of as a positive. Not to brag about it, but to just tell you what my secret sauce was. I decided early in my career never to drink, ever. And I don't drink. And the reason I decided not to drink is because I realized that I was noticing women around me, when they drank, they made themselves vulnerable. Like, men would touch them, or they could get roofied, or things like that. And I thought, this business is so gross.
Yeah.
That I'm always going to be the sober driver. I'm going to be, and I'll tell you this, it's really helped me a lot in life, because, as I said, I've worked for like good men and bad men. And even the bad men, when they have tried to say something or do something, I go, I'm the good daughter you've never had.
Oh.
I'm the sober person. I'm the one that's going to drive you home. Don't mess with me.
Yeah.
And as a result, some of the people, I can't even mention their names, because if I mention them, people go, you worked for that person who's disgusting and horrible. I go, they weren't disgusting and horrible to me.
Right. Because
I have such an incredible boundaries that nothing bad like that has ever happened to me.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Keep yourself, it's almost like you're keeping yourself guarded through your own sacrifice of not drinking. And
you know what? It's not even a sacrifice, because if you don't do it,
right,
you don't miss it.
Right.
Like when you see somebody like me that has, I've made 700 shows, but only maybe 3 are big successes. The rest of them are like, meat and potatoes. But some of those are like devastating. Some of the things that you like work the hardest on doesn't happen.
Right.
But, and they have happened to me. And I say fear and failure are my best friends. Because I say to people, I'm not fearless. I'm not perfect. I'm afraid every day.
Yeah.
And I have failed many, many times. I mean, if you look at my resume, it looks really successful. And I tell people, here's the good news. You only have to do 2 or 3 things right, and you have a great resume.
True.
And you have to fail many times to have 2 or 3 things go right.
To get those 2 or 3, right.
So I have failed so many times in my personal life and in projects I've made that haven't worked or whatever. But I am such, I am a real eternal optimist in that I already had the worst thing happen. The worst thing that happened to me is leave my country when I was 5 years old. and have my parents be devastated. And everything from that moment on has been like, I am in the greatest country in the world. I promise you. I have traveled the entire world. What you realize traveling around the world is life is all about where you end up geographically. And that is random selection.
Yeah.
Okay? You could have been born in Afghanistan.
True.
You're not doing this.
True.
I don't care if you can sing, if you can direct, whatever. You're in a war. So if I get sad and depressed, this is what I think. If I'm afraid, I do it anyway. I wrote a book that I was afraid to write. I'm like, who the hell am I to write a finance book? I turned it into a New York Times bestseller. And I was like, who are you? And I go, do it anyway, do it. I yell at myself. Yeah. And then when I fall, which I fall often, I go, and I get depressed, and I go cry it out at home, whatever. And then I go, girl, get up and get back on the horse.
Right.
Because life is about consistency and completion. You may think you're making the movie of your dreams, right?
Right.
And the movie tanks.
Right.
And then somebody goes, well, you do this other thing, and you go, oh, I don't want to do that. And then you do the thing, and that's a hit.
Yeah. Right.
Or you meet somebody in a Burger King, and they it happened to me the other day. I'm sitting next to somebody in the hair salon. I'm working on another show, and the lady sits next to me, and I'm like, oh, whatever. And she goes, and we start talking, and she's the exact person I need to meet for the show. Those things happen.
Absolutely.
So if you're not in the game, if you don't get out of the house, go do stuff, show up, just show up. Showing up is everything, and completing is everything.
Man, I need to hear this more and more. I need you in my life more often. Super, I'm inspired. So I love that you said it. Just show up. That's like most of the battle. Before the talent, I would say showing up is more important than the talent.
Absolutely.
What do you think? The work
100%. There's plenty of talented people that are lazy or they just don't go. I mean, just being present.
Yeah.
And showing up and completing what you say you're going to do is a lot. And I tell people all the time to take acting class. Because I think even if you don't want to be an actor, it's important to read in the voice of someone more empowered than you. Like I always say, when you hear people sing for the first time, they sound like they're karaokeing, right? Like they sound like the person, they're trying to copy the singer that they are singing the song of. And when artists become really powerful is when they sound eventually like themselves. I think you have to choose yourself. And you have to, and if you can't do it, if you're like a wimpy person, which is okay, no one's born out of the womb with a voice, right?
Yeah.
Go take acting class. I love reading in the voice of when Shonda Rhimes wrote Scandal. I love Olivia Pope. Because I love that, I know Shonda Rhimes, and she's the shyest, meekest person, maybe not anymore, but was.
Yeah.
And she wrote Olivia Pope like some badass killer. And like in a certain cadence, like
her alter ego, right?
It's her alter ego.
Yeah.
And you know what? I code switch too, because like my son sees me with my parents and he goes, Mom, you're like a different person with your parents. I go, that's my sweet person because those are my parents. But when I'm in business, I'm in business. And it's like,
yeah.
You know how like Beyonce says she's Beyonce and then she's like, what's her name? Sasha.
Yeah, Sasha Fierce.
Sasha Fierce. I feel like I'm little Nely, immigrant girl, and then I'm Nely Galán.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go. And I don't take shit from anybody.
You were on The Apprentice. I
was on Celebrity Apprentice.
That show was awesome.
No, by the way, and it changed my life. I got so much press out of that thing that I realized, what was I thinking not wanting to do a reality show? It helped my business tenfold.
Yeah.
Because I was a hidden figure behind the scenes. And in fact, that show is what made me write the book. Because now we're going to get into financial literacy.
Yeah.
I realized that I was on the show. I got 1 million letters. The LA Times did a story on it.
Wow.
All minority women wrote me and said, did you go to Harvard? How did you learn to speak truth to power? And they all they all work in Fortune 500 corporations. And they all invited me. And I went on a big tour speaking at all these companies. And I realized that I could really help women as someone. By the way, at that point, I hadn't even finished college. I went back to school and got a doctorate, but that's the next part of the story.
Yeah, we're going to that.
But I had been an intern that became an assistant, that became and worked my way up, as Rigoberta says, step by step by step. And when I went and spoke at all these places, I realized that I had created a voice. And that all these women were lacking a voice. They didn't know how to stand up for themselves. And I didn't learn that from my parents. And I didn't even learn it overnight. I learned it step by step, by practicing, by taking acting lessons, by pretending I was a character that really knew how to talk back to people. And then it became part of me, you know? And that was the beginning of an idea I had. And then, long story short, I made a couple of big chunks of money, which allowed me, when my son was going through a lot, my son had learning disabilities in the 3rd grade, and he said, I'm never gonna go to college, I'm never gonna finish school. And he goes, you didn't finish school and you did well. And I go, watch me. And I decided to do something radical, and I quit everything. I went back to school. I got a master's and doctorate in clinical psychology and focused on the psychology of money in multicultural communities. Why is it that our communities don't thrive? Because we have limiting beliefs around money. And by that point, I was a multimillionaire.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, if I could do this, and I'm not a genius, and I did this step by step by step, and what I did is really learn from all those bosses that I had. They said to me, when you make money, you then save money, and the money you save, you invest it in real estate or in stocks or in something. And I lived beneath my means, and I took all the money I made, and I bought buildings. And many years later, I have made 5 times the money in real estate than in TV.
Incredible. Did you go back to school because of that situation with your son, or were you also motivated? You wanted to further your education?
I had always wanted to go. I'm like a very good student, and I always did. But like, I got into TV so early, and I also
So was this kind of a timeout of like, I've done this?
It was a timeout.
And I'm going to accomplish this.
And also, I think, just to be really, because I am really honest, I think that as smart as I was, and and ahead of everybody, you know, chronologically, because I had been working in TV so early, I was kind of immature personally, hence why my personal relationships wouldn't work, because I skipped a lot of steps. Like, you know, when you see, what is it, Doogie Howser or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, if you go to medical school and you skip high school and you skip, I kind of lived that life.
Right.
I finished high school a year and a half early. I didn't go to college.
You were 15, then 16 and a half, had a job.
And I never, like, I went to all-girl Catholic school. I really didn't date, so I picked the bad guys.
The bad boys, yeah.
So,
which we didn't get into, any of your bad boys.
Yeah,
but.
So when you get to now 40s and you're like, okay, I'm a multimillionaire, but I'm an idiot. Like, when it comes to my personal life. Yeah. So I thought it might be a good thing for me to take 4 years off. I did a 6-year program in 4 years, go back to school and really finish school and go live part-time in a dorm, write papers, humble yourself.
Wow.
You know, in order to get a doctorate in psychology, I had to give 3,000 hours of therapy to kids in a middle school that didn't know who the hell I was.
And you're rich at this time already.
I'm rich.
You're very wealthy.
I mean, I'm not a billionaire, but I didn't have to work another day.
To go sit with kids. I mean, now are you looking at your clock going, I'm spending 6 hours doing this, where my time, my efficiency could be used another way? Or are you like, look, this is what I'm doing.
No, that's what I needed to do.
And this is what I need to do.
I think, by the way, besides having my son, the greatest thing I've done in my life is go back to school.
Wow. No, that's
I think
amazing.
it was what I needed, and I'm very proud of myself that I felt like I wasn't well in the head.
Yeah.
And that I went and fixed it in a way that I could.
I love that. That's a literal timeout.
And you think, because this country teaches you, like my agent, I had Mark Aitken, the best agent in Hollywood for TV, and he's like, are you insane? You're leaving your career at the peak of your career? And I go, I have to go through the fear that if I leave my career, that I won't get a career again. That's like my insecurity. No, I'm going to be fine. And after that, I wrote my dissertation, is my book. It became a New York Times bestseller. That's come out in Spanish, English, and Mandarin, has been sold all over the world, hundreds of thousands of copies, and that started me on a whole new path.
Wow. I love that. Let's talk about your path. Where are you at now?
Yes.
What's happening? What?
Okay, so another weird phase of my life. I was in the peak of my book, and I was in the middle of, I had written a second book. Then the pandemic happened, and the second book was called Don't Buy Shoes, Buy Buildings.
Oh.
And I then realized I couldn't put out that book because the real estate market was horrific during the pandemic.
Right.
And I had to stop again. And then my mom got very ill, and I had to move to Florida to help my parents transition to the last phase of their life. And I quit everything, and I just helped my parents for 2 years. And I ended up getting them straightened out about 6 months ago. And I told my son, who really helped me, who was at the University of Miami here, I said, we're going on a trip around the world. Wow. And I did the trip of a lifetime with my son, which I think is the third best thing I've ever done, because we'll never, that experience will never go away. And now I'm starting phase 3 of my life, and I'm going to do something completely different again. I actually already wrote a book that is coming out in October that you're going to laugh, because it's something so weird and geeky. But I felt like what I've learned in my financial literacy period is that the holy grail to become wealthy is something none of us know about, and that's how do you deal with taxes and the tax code. Billionaires pay no taxes, not because they're cheating,
right,
but because in fact they know how to use a tax code, and they hire people to do that. And so I wrote a book with a man named Julio Gonzalez, who is the tax expert of all the billionaires in America, about how middle class people and small business owners can change their lives by learning the tax code.
I love that. That's important.
So I would say at this point in my life, I do have one last big project left in me, which I'm going to do, but I can't talk about it yet because I don't want to jinx it. Okay. And I'm very focused on love, because I think that as someone, now we're going to finish with what I didn't talk about, which is for someone who is very immature and lived life very career oriented and didn't really stop to really focus on what did I want in love and how do I want to love. Love is everything.
I was just going to say, you mean love in like humanity or intimacy and romance?
I'm saying in all ways, loving your child, your children, your friends, your whatever. But in the end, when your kid leaves, now I'm an empty nester. My kid is gone. I wanted to find love for me. And you have to put time into that. Like you think that should just show up. No, it doesn't just show up.
Right. A lot of work.
We live in a world where you don't just meet people anymore. So I've had to really put time into that, and I'm in a space of falling in love.
Oh wow! Congratulations. We just met. Congrats.
You're right.
That's great. Congrats. That's awesome.
Isn't that beautiful? So I will go back to work, and I do have and I feel like I'm older and wiser. So like about work now, it's even easier because I know what not to do.
Right. Please.
I think that if you're a young person, you should immediately not live in LA, New York, Miami, Chicago. Go Google emerging cities. And, people say to me, you're so lucky, you've made money. I go, people don't realize I've moved 15 times. Yeah. I'm from New York, but I left New York to go make money and live in Texas, and I lived in New Mexico and Boston. I've lived in Latin America. I've lived in Israel. I've lived in a lot of places to end up in LA in a moment where LA was very depressed and I was able to buy real estate cheap.
Yeah.
But I would not start my career in LA.
Right.
Kids have to realize, like, emerging cities that are still cheap. If everybody else is doing it, run. Do the opposite of that. I'm about to do the opposite of what everybody's doing. Not what everybody's doing.
I like that. So for the people listening, because if they're, I know my audience is like me, they're listening going, well, what is that? What are ways that they could find that they have no idea? When we talk about AI being an emerging business, how do they find, what is it? Google, who do they talk to?
It's so easy. I mean, if you really want to do it, go to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT right now, what are the emerging cities? ChatGPT, tell me what are the top 100 emerging businesses I should go into starting now.
Wow.
I mean, this is not, you don't have to go to a library, you don't have to go to Google.
Yeah.
Use the technology we have.
I like
that. So it doesn't get easier than that.
I want you to do one more thing. You gave a lot of advice already. I want you to look in the camera. I ask all guests to do this at the end of the podcast. Look into the camera. Somebody at home that's looking at your career path and your life experiences, and they're thinking, man, maybe I could do something like that? What advice do you have? I know you mentioned the ChatGPT, but a little bit more on the inspiration of how they should pursue.
I think start with dreaming big ideas. Don't dream small, because if you dream small, they'll end up even smaller. Dream really big and really tell yourself that you can do it. Don't even take something on if you're not willing to complete. Like, I had to go back to school and I had to commit to finishing school and getting a doctorate. And most people dropped out. Don't ever drop out. Keep going. Keep going. Get back on the horse, even if you fall, and keep going, because you are going to get there in the way you least expect. I promise.
Nely, I have one more question for you. Did you ever, in your wildest dreams, when you were 15 and you wrote that about the school and the Catholic nuns, did you ever think your life would end up the way it has, the journey you've been on?
I'm a manifester, so I visualize everything. So I tell people that when I was living in Teaneck, New Jersey with my parents, and I was 10 years old, and kids were putting up boy band people in their room, I had seen an ad with Sherry Lansing, who was the first woman president of a movie studio, in an ad for American Express. And I ripped it out of the magazine. And I put it up, and I said, I don't belong in New Jersey. I'm going to end up in LA, and I'm going to run an entertainment business.
Wow.
And I think, I'll tell you this. When I was 20, I went to Color Me Mine. And for my 20th birthday, I did a vision tile of what I thought my life would be. And I left it in my parents' garage. And when I was 40, my parents sent me all the junk that I had in the garage. And my son opened the box and he goes, "Oh my God, you're a manifester." Because the tile looked like our house in Venice, California. It had Galan Entertainment. Galan Entertainment didn't exist when I was 20. It had a dog. It had a company. It had all these things. I mean, it was like a whole thing. And my son goes, "Mom, that's crazy." And I go, "No, you." And I keep changing what I'm looking for. Like, I have achieved everything I wanted to manifest, so I had to start again. And I do that with women when I go on these tours with women, and I say, let's draw. You got to draw it. You've got to see it. You've got to see yourself on the Today Show. I've seen myself on the Today Show before it happened. I saw myself on Celebrity Apprentice before it happened.
Does everybody have what it takes to be a success?
Everybody. At different levels. Mm-hmm. Like, you could retire in some little small town for $50,000 a year and live well.
Right.
And then other people have more grandiose aspirations. But at whatever level you want, you have the ability to do it at the highest level that you could do it. Of course.
I agree 100%. Being in this country, is there any excuse?
None.
To not chase the greatest you can be?
Honestly, it's pathetic if you don't. It really is. And I really encourage you guys, any of you that are doubting me, please go to India. Please go to Nepal. Please go to China. But don't go to Beijing. Go to inside. Right. You're going to come home loving every second of being an American. I am very patriotic. I love this country. And I just feel like every minute of every day here, I feel blessed that in this lifetime that my parents had the foresight to bring me here, and that this country took me in. No, there's no excuse. None. We have everything we need. Everything we need for greatness.
Guys, I'm going to close this out. This is another amazing episode of FYI. I hope you got something out of this. I know I got a ton. Let me just name a couple things. Some of the things that Nely talked about from such a young age, to me, that's incredible that somebody at 15 and a half years old took it upon themselves to write a paper the way she did, and what opportunities came from that by just, I don't know if there was a master plan in just writing what she felt, and it went somewhere. It got seen by the right people. Lesson number one I see by that: do the work. I always say what my dad's always told me, God helps those that do the footwork. I do the footwork every chance I get, and life's been okay so far. I'm not Bill Gates and I'm not Elon Musk, but I'm living my dream and I'm working and I got a roof over my head. So what I got from that is take the liberty, have the courage to do the things you feel, all right? If you're not hurting other people, right? Have the courage to stand on your own 2 feet and do it. Nely did that at 15 and a half, and it led to incredible, as you heard. I mean, all the way to being the first Latina president of a network. How incredible is that? I heard from her to be open, see it, visualize it, know that you can do it, know that you have what it takes, especially if you're in America. There's no excuse. There truly is no excuse to chase and achieve the greatest that you can. We all have what it takes to be great. We all have what it takes. We got to believe in us. I hope you believe in yourself. Listen, not all of us, like Nely said, are going to retire in these huge Beverly Hills mansions, but maybe we retire in a small town, happy with what's around us. That also entails being happy with what you have and being grateful with what you have. I took so many gems out of this. I won't make this any longer. I love this interview. I'm truly inspired. I hope you enjoyed it. Please look up Nely, reach out to her on social media and contact her. Check out her podcast, subscribe to it, and until next time, this is Paul Tully, Finding Your Inspiration. Thank you.
You should never stress about the problems you be facing. Everybody in the mud on the struggle trying to make it. Look into the mirror and you see the motivation. Then you step into the world and you find your inspiration. I'm finding inspiration, and once I get a hold of it, I'll never get complacent. Look into the mirror and you see the motivation. Then you step into the world and you find your inspiration.